Oddly, I joined the army, but even in the army, in the parachute regiment, I was still, interested in military aviation, especially World War II. While I was in the parachute regiment, I went on the Red Devils for 5 years. I learned to fly while I was on the Red Devils parachute team, and flying second because I'm really into history more than aeroplanes. So when I'm strapped in a Hurricane, with a World War II leather helmet on and oxygen mask, smelling the same smells with a Merlin 3 engine in front of me that was built in 1938,
Wow.
that definitely flew in the Battle of Britain. At a Battle of Britain airfields, taken off into the slipstream of heroes around Cambridgeshire. I mean, what better way to read about history and then actually do it? So when you read a book by Tom Neal on gun button to fire, you've got a gun button to fire, at 300 miles an hour, right in front of your face. You're like, how did I get here?
The following is a conversation with Andy Goodall. Now, if you tune into the UAP Files podcast for UFO UAP related content, you might be a bit disappointed with this one because this is not really about UFOs. Andy runs Warbird Experience UK, and he takes people out essentially in experiences in World War II aircraft, and they have great reviews, and it's super fascinating stuff. Now, Andy's not really got any real interest in UFOs, but I contacted him because I really needed to speak to somebody and get some footage of some old aircraft for a documentary I'm putting together, which is hopefully going to be out later next year. Originally planned for December this year, but that's not going to happen. I injured my back, and I've got loads of interviews still to do. They're all in person. They're across the country. But awesome B-roll. We're doing a section on Foo Fighters, so his aircraft and interviews with him and his team are really going to help with that documentary. So we talk about some of that, but ultimately this is about aviation. This is about Andy's military experience, how it feels to fly these old World War II aircraft. So it's really, really interesting conversation. Not really anything to do with UFOs. So if you're here specifically for that, you're probably not going to get it. But if you're interested in aviation, World War II aircraft, this is a really fun conversation. And Andy's such a cool dude. So without further ado, the following is a conversation with Andy Goodall. Andy, thanks so much for joining me. If it's okay, I'd just like to get a quick idea of your sort of passion for vintage aircraft. How did that start? How did that happen? How did you get into it?
Yeah, well, yeah, I hate to admit it, but I'm 58 in 2 days' time. So I'm just of that Gen X where I would go to work with my dad, and everybody that my dad worked with had been in World War II. So as a 6-year-old kid, I was walking around, you know, um, with a German Iron Cross on and a tin helmet. That all these guys would give me. They'd all tell me stories about fighting at Dunkirk, and my dad was in Malaya National Service.
Right.
So everybody from my generation, really, their dad or certainly their granddads were all in World War II. So living in Derby, I'm kind of surrounded by bomber bases, and my mum would say, bombers used to crash here, and the boys would go and break the glass, get a hot rod, put it through the perspex, make rings for the girls, and all these things. I was just completely brought up around World War airfields, and as a kid, these airfields still had vehicles on them, rotting away, and I'd be in them and breaking into ammunition stores and all sorts of stuff, and so I've just been, interested in the military since a kid, and we used to have top trump cards, where, what's your favorite plane? And
Yeah,
it'd be a
yeah.
Spitfire or a Hurricane or something like that, and, oddly, I joined the army, but even in the army, in the parachute regiment, I was still, interested in military aviation, especially World War II. And then while I was in the parachute regiment, I went on the Red Devils for 5 years. I learned to fly while I was on the Red Devils parachute team. I learned to fly our aircraft, which was Go Red, a twin turbine Islander, and that sparked my interest. And eventually I thought, okay, it'd be nice to fly Spitfire. How do you do it? And basically, that's the story in itself. But that's really the general. That's the foundation of the interest in history, and flying second because I'm really into history more than aeroplanes. So when I'm
Okay.
strapped in a Hurricane, with a World War II leather helmet on and oxygen mask, smelling the same smells with a Merlin 3 engine in front of me that was built in 1938,
Wow.
that definitely flew in the Battle of Britain, at a Battle of Britain airfields, taken off into the slipstream of heroes around Cambridgeshire. I mean, what better way to read about history and then actually do it? So when you read a book by Tom Neal on gun button to fire, you've got a gun button to fire, at 300 miles an hour right in front of your face. You're like, how did I get here? This is mental. It's absolutely crazy. But when I'm up there, with 1,030 horsepower thumping away in front of me, with the smell and the carbon monoxide, and the gases, all the good stuff. That to me is makes the hair stand up on the back of my neck. And then I read about it, and then the performance. You're rattling in over the M11 at 280 miles an hour, pulling up, from 100 feet, pulling up into a wing over, and looking down and seeing 1,800 feet below you. You think, wow. And now I like the performance, and then you just wallop it down again. So it's history first. Then you get to fly these machines, and then you experience the power and the thrill and the flying side. So for me, that's how I feel about vintage
Yeah.
Warbird flying.
Yeah.
Quite
Superb.
emotive, really.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. What a feeling. I mean, that's
Yeah,
it's got to be a feeling that hardly anybody in the world experiences. And it's, there's something special about flying anyway, just because it seems like we shouldn't be able to. It's we shouldn't be
yeah.
able to be in the sky, but to be in the sky with something that's just a vintage aircraft with so much history and yeah, just incredible. The smells and experience, yeah, second to none, I guess. There can't be
Well,
much else
well,
out there that's as incredible as
well,
that.
it is. I've been lucky enough to fly, quite a few airplanes, and the guys that fought in these airplanes. I mean, they were flying the fastest, the best airplanes on the planet. When the Hurricane came out, people were wowed by it. In 1939, it was one of the fastest planes on the planet, and the first squadron that got it, I think it was Treble One Squadron. They were given it because they were the best. And everyone was frightened of this thing. And now we have the luxury of flying fighters that were after the Hurricane. You get in the Hurricane, it's not that fast. It's a bit of it's very hard to manually fly, because it was a biplane where they chopped the two wings off. They put one wing on it, and it's a very quickly, produced and designed and made airplane. So it's got a lot of quirks, where you really have to fly it. And you're up in the sky and you think, wow, they actually fought in this, but to them, they're flying the best machine in the day.
Yeah.
But now you're like, you pull up at 300 miles an hour, and before you know it, you've got like 100 miles an hour on the clock because it's so draggy, and the speed bleeds off very quick, and you've got to fly it all the time. Unlike a Spitfire that, is a bit more slippery because it's the next generation. Um, so yeah, that those kind of things are interesting. You read the books of them fighting for their lives, and then you're like, wow, it doesn't accelerate fast enough.
Yeah.
Or you're diving down to try and get 300 miles an hour for a loop, and you think, wow, you'd be strafing the enemy at this speed, but it's not fast enough. I want 500 miles an hour, because you think they got so much time to shoot at you. So you get a lot of perspective from what the pilots would have seen back in the day. They're very brave, to fly something that was in combat that wasn't actually that quick.
Yeah. Incredible.
Yeah.
Tell us about the Warbird experience then. So how did that come about and what's that all about?
Yeah, so it goes right back to the original journey. I was a parachute pilot. I was quite bored going up to 13,000 feet, dropping parachutists as a skydiver as well. And I had a ton of hours, and I wanted to fly a Spitfire, and like everybody, So how does it all start? And at the same time, one of my best mates, he fell off his motorbike. He lost his spleen, broke his arm. His arm didn't repair for 2 years. He's badly diagnosed, and he had he wasn't happy about the treatment that he'd had, and he said, "I can do better than that. I'm going to be a doctor." So I said, "Right then, you be a doctor. I'll fly Spitfire. Let's have a race." And he became a doctor, and I flew a P-51 Mustang at about the same time. So we both achieved what we set out to do. his is more lucrative and got a lot more longevity in it than me. Very expensive hobby, but yeah, that's kind of how it worked. So I was highly motivated to fly Warbird. So I looked at flying a Harvard because you've got to have a considerable amount of Harvard time before you get in a Hurricane, a Mustang, or a Spitfire because it's heavy tailwheel and it's accessible and fairly cheap. But the cost of flying a Harvard is about 1,500 quid an hour, and you need about 200 hours. So I was like, how am I going to get that? So I bought a share in a Harvard. Eventually, I became the owner, and then I had to keep it going. So I then formulated a business plan around the aircraft, and we started, a little flying school under a declared training organisation. The aircraft's got a certificate of airworthiness on it. All the pilots are flying instructors, registered as a business, VAT registered. People come in, pay your money. money comes in one end, goes out the other end at a high rate of knots. Learned a lot about servicing, mechanics, engineering, just general cost of aviation. And, we've built a family of volunteers that the aeroplane has brought together. We've got people from all sorts of backgrounds that volunteer their services at weekends. A couple of the guys have got rabbit tattoos on their arms. So one guy's got his own personal registration, wacky wabbit. And these people are just into it. So I've created an amazing team, and we keep the plane going. We've really got the next generation of Warbird pilots through pilots coming through the organisation, and it's just been a self-sustaining fun machine that's just kept going. So we do it really just to keep the pilots current, get new pilots in, keep the rabbit flying historically, and all have a load of fun.
So the experience that people go, so they'll come. I mean, obviously, when I came down to see you guys and we did a bit of filming. Obviously, thanks so much for letting me come down and talk to you. And I think it was David, wasn't it? Who's an airline pilot.
Yep, Dave. Yeah, flies for
Yeah,
Jet too.
yeah, and real nice guy, and tons of experience. And he was sort of talking us through what it's like to take people up there and the sort of experience that you have. But can you give us a bit of an idea of what, going out with you guys feels like and how that
Yeah.
works?
So basically, it's like I learned a new word recently, dupe from the kids, but basically it's a Spitfire dupe, So to fly a Spitfire will cost you about 3,000 quid for 20 minutes. But a lot of people can't afford that experience. So I mean, pound for pound, flying in a Harvard is exactly the same. It makes a lot of noise, it smells of petrol, smells of oil. We can do a lot with it, loops, Cubans, rolls, barrel rolls, absolutely everything. It was the advanced trainer for the Spitfire Mustang, even Lancasters in some cases. So when they come with us, they get a proper Battle of Britain experience. So because it's a flying lesson, it's exercise 3, air experience. The customer who comes along is doing a flying lesson, so they get in the back, and then at a certain point of flight, we give them control of the airplane, and they get to turn left and turn right. And most of the time, like, wow, it's so sensitive. Yes, because it's a fighter trainer. It's a big lump of metal, but it's designed to be a fighter trainer, and it performs like a fighter. So they get to control it, and then if they want a Battle of Britain experience, they pay a little bit extra, $4.99, and we give them 8 minutes of what it's like to be in a dogfight. So evasive moves, combat moves, loops, rolls, Cubans, basic aerobatics, and everything a pilot would have been shown and taught in 1940 before the Battle of Britain. So we'll show you exactly what you needed to go into the battle with in the same aeroplane as they would have trained in back in 1940.
Superb. And I've seen the reviews, man. They're incredible, aren't they? People have a
Yeah,
fantastic time. It looks. I mean, I
yeah,
see the videos on
yeah,
your Instagram. It looks like a lot of fun, a lot of fun.
yeah.
But it's one of those things that, like I said earlier, not many people get the opportunity to experience anything like that. Like I say, it's being in the sky and in a commercial airline. Sorry, you're going on holiday somewhere and you look out the window and you're very sort of safe, and you haven't got that experience that you guys present to people and provide to people. And I think it's so unique Um, just incredible,
Well,
just
yeah,
incredible.
well, a lot of the pilots that fly for me that are airline pilots, including my future wife, they just don't get any manual handling skills. So they don't ever do more than 30 degrees angle of bank. And although airline flying is very skillful in its own right, a lot of the airline pilots say, I actually want that sticking with a manual flying skill and I want to keep hold of it. So flying something like the Harvard, they call it the pilot maker, and they have done for 80 years because it's a very tricky airplane to land in a crosswind.
Right.
Not if you're experienced. It's fun. It's focused. It's great, but you do have to land on one wheel most of the time, and you're really moving that stick in all the right directions and your rudder, and all your sensors are involved. So yeah, a lot of the airline pilots they love it because they get a huge amount of stick and rudder, quality stick and rudder time.
Yeah. And you guys based out in Peterborough, is that your sort of main base or you all over?
Yeah, we do as a flying school. We have to register certain airfields if you want to go there to do our flying experiences. So we do have places like Barton in Manchester. It's pretty much where I am right now, apart from the palm trees. And we have Foulmere near Duxford. But Peterborough is great. We're hangared there. It's our main office is there, and we literally roll it out. Doesn't cost a penny. Fly it, put it back in. The moment we have to transit somewhere, it's costing a huge amount of fuel. But we do a lot of flights at Old Warden on the air show days.
Andy, where would people go if they want to find you, if they want to learn more about this? Where would we direct them?
Yeah, the best place to go is on www.t6harvard.com. And I've made the website over the last 15 years. And for me, it's actually very simple. I've made it super simple. So you just book now, and it just takes you very simply through, locations and dates, and very simple to book online. That's the best bet.
Cool, cool. And I'll stick some details in the description of this video so people can go and have a look.
Yeah,
Awesome, awesome. Well, look, I really appreciate it, Andy, and thanks again for letting us come down and do some filming with you. And I'm looking forward to putting that all together and seeing, especially seeing David up there on camera. He was awesome. Good talking to
yeah,
him. Good talking to you as well. And the plane's just awesome. Being up close to it, looking at, I mean, obviously I got to sit in it, which was pretty cool as well. But just
yeah.
being up close to something, it's just awe-inspiring, isn't it? Awe-inspiring. It really is. For somebody like me that doesn't get to see that very often, certainly not up close. You see the
Mm.
pictures. Incredible. Awesome.
Yeah.
What a cool thing to spend your time doing.
Yeah, it's so my I call him my adopted granddad. He was shot down in Africa in 1941. I had it painted in not his memory because it was alive at the time. When I painted it, but I specifically had it painted in North African colours. So AJ841 did actually work in Libya, taking pilots between Palestine and Aleppo in Syria, British pilots, and it was used for ferrying pilots around from 1941 to 1946. So it is a representation of an aeroplane that did exist and did fly in those actual colours. And I think it's beautiful. There's not another like it other than one in Australia, which represents exactly the same type of aeroplane that flew in North Africa with the British. Yeah, and every time I'm sitting there with an ice cream or a coffee and I see it fly past, I have to pinch myself and think, that's mine. How the hell?
Yeah,
It really is something else. I actually forget I've got it sometimes because I'm so busy, you know, doing all the admin.
yeah,
But when I get to fly it, it's never a disappointment. That's for sure.
yeah. I can imagine. I can imagine. Superb. Awesome. Nice one. Take care of
Yeah,
yourself. Thanks,
right.
man.
Have a great
Cheers.
weekend. See
You
you later,
too.
mate.
See you
Bye
later.
bye.
Bye
Bye.
now.